I stood in the VIP lounge of the Grand Meridian Hotel, watching the gala's live feed. On the red carpet, Brenda, my brother's wife and a notorious image-obsessed thief, was posing for cameras, flaunting the priceless antique diamond necklace my mother had left. For years, she had systematically raided my closet, stealing handbags and jewelry, while my in-laws shielded her, calling me too sensitive or a liar. They thrived on the narrative that Brenda was a perfect socialite, and I was a petty, small-minded sister. She thought I was just another weak victim, whose things she could claim as her own. She didn't know that 3 months ago, I had upgraded my security. I'd installed high-def hidden cameras inside my closet and custom-ordered a microscopic, RF-shielded tracking chip, embedded directly into the velvet lining of the heirloom's box. I tapped my phone, activating the live GPS sync. A steady, rhythmic beep started playing in my earpiece, matching Brenda's pulse on the carpet. The press were swarming her, asking for a close-up of her stunning vintage piece. I looked at the police detective standing beside me. He didn't even wait for the red carpet event to end. As Brenda turned to kiss her husband for the cameras, the detective stepped into the light. The flash of the cameras blinded everyone for a second, then went wild as the officer took the necklace off her neck, right there in front of the world, and placed her in handcuffs for grand larceny. The look on her face wasn't just shock. It was the realization that her perfect life was over. 8 months earlier, I believed the worst thing Brenda could do to me was make me feel small at family dinners. I had no idea how wrong I was. The first thing that went missing was a scarf. Cream silk, hand-rolled edges, a gift from a client I'd worked with for 3 years to close a deal that had nearly broken me. I noticed it gone on a Tuesday, assumed I'd left it at the office, and didn't think about it again until I saw it 2 weeks later, draped over Brenda's shoulders in a photo she'd posted from a charity luncheon, captioned "Treating myself asterisk." I told myself it was a coincidence. Cream silk scarves weren't exactly rare. I let it go, the way you let go of small, irrational suspicions you don't want to admit you're having about family. The second thing was harder to explain away. A pair of earrings, sapphire studs, nothing extravagant but specific enough. A design I'd had custom made after my first big promotion. A small private reward I'd given myself for surviving a year I hadn't been sure I would survive. I kept them in a lacquered box on my dresser, in the guest wing of my brother David's house, where I'd been staying for 6 weeks while my own place underwent renovation. I found the box empty on a Thursday morning. I searched my suitcase, my coat pockets, the car twice before I let myself consider the obvious. Brenda had been in and out of the guest wing constantly that week, dropping off fresh towels, checking on me. A hospitality so attentive it had started to feel less like kindness and more like reconnaissance, though I hadn't let myself think the word yet. I found the earrings 10 days later. Not on Brenda, she was smarter than that, at least in the beginning, but in a photo from a dinner party worn by a woman I didn't recognize, tagged in a caption thanking Brenda for the most gorgeous gift you shouldn't have. She was giving my things away, not even keeping them, redistributing pieces of my life to a social circle that would never know where they'd actually come from, currency spent to buy herself a reputation for generosity. I confronted her carefully, the way you confront someone you still, on some stubborn level, want to believe isn't capable of what the evidence suggests. I waited until we were alone in the kitchen, no audience, no performance for anyone else. "Brenda, this might sound strange," I said, "but I'm missing a pair of earrings, sapphire studs. Have you seen them anywhere?" Her face didn't change in any way I could point to and call proof. That was the thing about Brenda I hadn't fully understood yet, how smooth the surface stayed even when something underneath was moving fast. "Earrings?" she said, tilting her head, the picture of gentle confusion. "No, I haven't seen anything like that. Are you sure you didn't leave them at your apartment before the renovation started? Things get misplaced during a move, Clara. Happens to everyone. I had them here. I remember wearing them the week I arrived." Well, a small, sympathetic smile, the kind adults give children who have lost something and need to be let down gently. "I hope they turn up." I let it drop that day, but I didn't stop noticing. Over the following month, a Cartier bracelet disappeared from my jewelry roll. A Chanel clutch I'd bought myself after signing my biggest client of the year vanished from the guest closet, only to resurface weeks later in a magazine spread about David and Brenda's home, credited in the caption as Brenda's Vintage Chanel, a family heirloom. As if my own purchase, made with my own money, 3 years before Brenda had even married into the family, had somehow always belonged to her by right of proximity. I brought it up at dinner, the clutch specifically, because a magazine caption felt like something I could actually point to, evidence instead of suspicion. Brenda, that clutch in the magazine, that's mine. I bought it in Milan. The table went quiet in the particular way a room goes quiet when everyone at it has already decided whose side they're on before the conversation even starts. Clara, my mother-in-law Diane, set her fork down with the weary patience of a woman intervening in a squabble between children. It's a handbag. I'm sure Brenda didn't mean anything by it. It's not about the bag, I said, though even as I said it, I understood how small it sounded, how easily it could be filed under asterisk petty, under asterisk dramatic asterisk, under every label that had already, I would later realize, been quietly assigned to me somewhere in conversations I wasn't part of. It's that she's telling people it's a family heirloom. It's mine. I bought it myself. Are you accusing me of lying? Brenda's voice cracked just slightly, just enough to make David's head turn toward her instead of me. I can't believe this. I've tried so hard to make Clara feel welcome in this family, and this is, she pressed her fingers to her eyes. I don't even know what to say. She's not accusing you of anything, sweetheart, David said, reaching for her hand. And I watched my own brother comfort his wife over a bag that belonged to me, in a room full of people who had known me my entire life, and were choosing, in real time, to believe the person who'd been part of the family for 4 years over the sister who'd been part of it for 30. I'm not trying to start a fight, I said, though it came out smaller than I wanted it to. I just want people to know it's mine. Clara, honestly, Diane again, her tone sliding from patience into something with an edge. You've been under a lot of stress since the renovation. Nobody's trying to take anything from you. Maybe you're just misplacing things more than usual. It happens. There it was, the sentence that would follow me for the rest of that year, repeated in different forms at different dinners, until it hardened into something close to consensus. You're misplacing things, not someone is stealing from you, not let's figure out what's happening. Just a soft, concerned suggestion that the problem lived inside my own head, that a woman who ran a 7-figure division at 34 couldn't be trusted to know what was in her own jewelry box. I looked around that table. My brother, whose hand hadn't left Brenda's, my mother-in-law, whose sympathy had already curdled into something closer to suspicion of me, my father-in-law, who hadn't said a word all evening and wasn't about to start now. And I understood, the way I'd later understand it again in that hotel VIP lounge with a detective at my side, that no one at this table was going to help me. Brenda dabbed at her eyes, recovering with the speed of someone who'd never really been hurt in the first place. I love this family, she said, to the table, not to me. I just wish sometimes people gave me the benefit of the doubt. Everyone nodded, everyone except me. I didn't say anything else that night. I finished my dinner, made polite conversation about David's upcoming golf trip, complimented Diane's centerpiece, and drove back to the guest wing with a calm I didn't recognize in myself. Not the calm of someone who'd let it go, but the calm of someone who had just quietly, permanently, stopped trying to be believed. If words weren't going to work, I would stop using them. I would let Brenda keep talking. I would let the family keep nodding along. And somewhere underneath all of it, without a single raised voice or another confrontation at another dinner table, I would start building something that wouldn't need anyone's benefit of the doubt at all. Evidence doesn't ask to be believed, it simply is. The security company sent someone discreet, a man named Marcus, who arrived in an unmarked van and referred to the cameras only as the equipment, never mentioning the word surveillance out loud even once, as though the walls themselves might repeat it. I had him install 4 units, one in the crown molding above my closet, angled down at the shelving where I kept jewelry boxes and handbags, small enough to disappear into the shadow of the trim, one inside the closet itself, tucked into the corner where a sprinkler head might normally sit, motion activated, silent, recording in a resolution sharp enough to read a watch face from across the room. 2 more covered the entry points to the guest wing, the hallway door, and the side door Brenda used when she thought no one was tracking her comings and goings, the one that let her slip in and out without passing the kitchen where David or Diane might ask what she needed. Everything feeds to an encrypted cloud folder, Marcus explained, showing me the app on my phone. Time-stamped, geotagged, tamper-proof. If anyone ever claims this was staged or edited, the metadata proves otherwise. I nodded, though what I was really thinking about wasn't the app. It was the sentence Diane had said at that dinner table, the one that had lodged itself somewhere behind my sternum and hadn't moved since. Maybe you're just misplacing things. I wanted a version of the truth that didn't require anyone's benefit of the doubt. I wanted something that simply was the way Marcus had described it, tamper-proof, indifferent to whether anyone chose to believe it. The GPS chip took longer, 3 weeks of back and forth with a specialist I found through a colleague who did private security consulting for executives worried about corporate espionage. The chip itself was smaller than a grain of rice, RF shielded so it wouldn't trigger standard jewelry store detectors, with a battery life rated at 11 months on standby, and a transmission range that, paired with a cellular relay, meant I could track it from anywhere with a phone signal. "Where do you want it?" the specialist asked, laying out 3 sample units on a velvet cloth like he was selling me earrings instead of surveillance hardware. I thought about my mother's necklace, sitting in its box in my closet safe, an antique diamond piece she'd left me 11 years ago, the one thing in that house Brenda hadn't touched yet, either out of some last vestige of restraint or because she hadn't found the right occasion to justify wearing it in public. "The lining," I said, "sew it into the velvet. It should never come out of the box, even if someone tries to remove it and put it back." He did the work himself, hand-stitching the chip into the underside of the velvet insert with a precision that made me understand, for the first time, why this kind of specialist charged what he charged. When he finished, the box looked exactly as it always had, soft, worn at the corners, my mother's initials embossed faintly on the lid. Nothing about it suggested it was now, in its own quiet way, wired. The first footage came 4 days after installation, and it told me something I hadn't fully let myself believe until I saw it. The timestamp read 2:47 in the afternoon, a Tuesday, the hour when David was at the office and Diane was reliably occupied with her book club 2 towns over. The side door camera caught Brenda first, letting herself into the guest wing with a key I hadn't known she had, moving with the unhurried confidence of someone who had done this so many times it had stopped registering as anything worth being careful about. The closet camera picked her up 90 seconds later. She went straight to the jewelry drawer, not searching, not browsing. She already knew what was there, which meant she'd done this kind of reconnaissance before, mapping my belongings the way a burglar cases a house before the actual break-in. She lifted out a pair of gold hoops I'd forgotten I owned, turned them over once in the light from the window, and slipped them into the interior pocket of her handbag with a motion so practiced it looked almost bored. She was in the room for 4 minutes and 11 seconds. She left everything else undisturbed, the drawer closed at exactly the angle she'd found it. The kind of care that only made sense if you understood she'd been getting away with this for a long time and had developed a system for making sure she kept getting away with it. I watched the footage twice, sitting on the edge of my bed with the lights off, and felt something settle in my chest that was almost peace. Not because I was happy. There was nothing happy in watching someone violate you with that much practiced ease. But because for the first time in 8 months, I had something that couldn't be reframed, couldn't be softened into asterisk misplacing things, couldn't survive a single conversation with Diane's weary patience aimed at it. I started the log that night. A spreadsheet, embarrassingly simple, 3 columns, date, item, timestamp, that I updated every time new footage came in, cross-referencing it against the GPS pings whenever an item disappeared and later resurfaced somewhere Brenda had been photographed. The Cartier bracelet's last known location, before it vanished, matched exactly with a closet camera clip of Brenda lifting it from the jewelry roll on a Thursday afternoon. It resurfaced 9 days later, worn in a photo from a boutique opening, geotagged automatically by the phone she'd used to post it, the coordinates landing 4 blocks from where I'd tracked the bracelet's signal that same morning. The pattern held for 6 weeks. A scarf, a pair of cufflinks that had belonged to my father, taken for reasons I couldn't begin to guess at. Since Brenda had no obvious use for men's jewelry beyond, I assumed, the pleasure of taking something that mattered to me. A silk blouse, still with the tags on, that appeared in a candid outfit photo 11 days after it vanished from my closet. I never confronted her again. That was the hardest part, harder than the installation, harder than watching the footage, sitting across from her at family dinners, complimenting an outfit I recognized as mine, asking polite questions about her week while a spreadsheet on my laptop quietly grew longer with every visit. I became, without meaning to, a better actress than she'd ever had to be because, unlike Brenda, I actually had something to hide. "You've been so calm lately," Diane observed one evening, watching me pass the potatoes to Brenda with what I hoped read as genuine warmth. "I'm glad you two worked things out." "We're fine," I said, and meant it in a way Diane couldn't possibly understand. We were fine. I had simply stopped needing her to believe me. The necklace came out of the closet safe on a Sunday afternoon in late October, 6 weeks before the company's annual gala, for reasons that had nothing to do with Brenda at all. My mother's estate attorney had called about an insurance appraisal, standard paperwork before the policy renewed, and I'd needed the piece out for a courier pickup, laid briefly on my dresser in its worn velvet box while I signed the release forms in the hallway. I didn't think about the timing until later. Didn't think about the fact that Brenda had been in the house that afternoon, ostensibly helping Diane plan the gala's seating chart, drifting in and out of rooms with the loose, unmonitored freedom of someone who considered every space in that house partially hers. The closet camera caught her in the doorway of my room at 3:14 that afternoon, drawn, it seemed, by nothing more than an open door and the particular gleam of a box she'd never seen before. She stopped in the frame the way a person stops when they see something that changes the shape of an afternoon. I watched the footage that night with a stillness that surprised me. Brenda stood in my doorway for 11 full seconds, staring at the necklace box on my dresser, not entering, not yet, some last thread of caution keeping her in the frame of the doorway rather than the room itself. And her expression, even through the grain of the closet cam's angle, was unmistakable. It was the look of a woman doing math, calculating value, calculating opportunity, calculating exactly how good that stone would look against her collarbone in a photograph that would run in 3 different society pages. She didn't take it that day. The courier had already arrived, and I'd walked back into the room moments after the footage caught her, watching her step back into the hallway with the practiced casualness of someone who'd simply been passing by. But I knew, watching that 11-second clip on a loop, exactly what I was looking at. I was looking at the moment Brenda decided she wanted my mother's necklace. Not a bracelet, not a bag she could quietly redistribute to a friend at a dinner party. This, the one piece in the house with a story attached to it. A piece she could wear somewhere loud enough, public enough, that taking it would stop being theft in her mind and start being something closer to triumph. The gala invitation arrived on my desk 2 days later, thick cream cardstock. The company's annual event, 6 weeks out, the kind of night where every wife and daughter-in-law in David's social circle would be photographed on a red carpet under lights bright enough to catch every diamond in the room. I closed my laptop that night, the spreadsheet still open in another window. Weeks of time-stamped evidence sitting quietly beneath the surface of a family that still thought I hadn't noticed anything at all. I already knew what she was going to do. I just had to decide now exactly how loud I wanted the room to be when she did it. The necklace disappeared from my closet safe 9 days before the gala, and for the first time in 8 months, I felt something close to gratitude toward Brenda for her timing. The footage showed her entering through the side door at 6:52 in the evening, a Wednesday, David golfing, Diane at a board meeting that would run late. She went straight to the safe. I'd left it unlocked that week deliberately, a small, calculated carelessness dressed up as an oversight, and lifted the velvet box out with both hands, the way you hold something you've already decided belongs to you. She opened it in the closet under the camera's steady, unblinking gaze, and I watched her face do the thing I'd been waiting 8 months to see. Not guilt. Not even the performance of guilt she'd have managed if she'd known she was being watched. Just a slow, satisfied smile, the smile of a woman who believed she had finally, quietly won something. She took the box with her. The GPS chip pinged its first location update 40 minutes later, from an address I recognized as her personal stylist's studio across town. Brenda, I would later learn, having the necklace privately appraised and photographed for what she intended to be the crowning piece of her gala look. I called the detective the next morning. Detective Reyes had been recommended to me by the same colleague who'd connected me with the GPS specialist, a woman who specialized in high-net-worth theft cases where families preferred discretion over headlines, at least until discretion stopped being useful. I laid the spreadsheet out for her across my kitchen table. 8 months of dates, items, timestamps, cross-referenced against geotagged photographs Brenda had posted herself. Each one a small, unwitting confession. "This is thorough," Reyes said, scrolling through the closet footage on my laptop, watching Brenda lift the necklace box with the same practiced ease she'd used on the earrings, the bracelet, the scarf. "Most people bring me a vague feeling and a missing bracelet. You brought me a case file." "I had time to build one," I said. "The necklace is the strongest piece," she said. "Provable provenance, your mother's estate documentation, a GPS trail showing continuous chain of custody from the moment it left your safe. If she wears it in public in front of witnesses with press documenting the exact moment," she looked up at me. "That's not a family dispute anymore, that's an arrest." "Good," I said, and the word came out steadier than I expected it to. We planned it over the following week, in conversations that felt less like plotting revenge and more like assembling a contract, precise and procedural. Reyes would attend the gala in plain clothes, credentialed as part of the venue's private security detail, a courtesy the hotel extended without asking too many questions once she flashed her badge. I would arrive separately, early enough to secure a position near the step and repeat where the press clustered thickest. The GPS relay would confirm in real time that the necklace on Brenda's neck matched the chip's last recorded signal, removing any possibility of a defense built around mistaken identity or a similar piece. "You don't have to be there when it happens," Reyes told me the day before the gala. "A lot of people prefer not to watch." "I want to watch," I said, and didn't elaborate further because I didn't think she'd understand that this wasn't about cruelty. It was about closing a loop that had been open for 8 months. Watching the last page get written in the same room where it had almost been erased. The gala was, by every visible measure, exactly the kind of night David's company threw every year. A ballroom dressed in white orchids and gold linen. A step-and-repeat banner crowded with photographers 3 deep. The particular electric hum of several hundred wealthy people performing effortlessness for each other under chandelier light. Brenda arrived 40 minutes after the doors opened. Timed, I understood immediately, for maximum visibility. Early enough to be photographed extensively, late enough that the room would already be full of witnesses to appreciate her entrance. She wore emerald green, a color chosen, I suspected, specifically because it made the diamonds sing against her collarbone. The necklace sat exactly where I'd known it would, centered, unmissed by a single lens in that room. My mother's antique setting catching the light in a way that made 3 separate photographers call out for her to turn, just slightly, chin up, hold that. "Isn't that stunning?" I heard a woman near me murmur to her husband. "I heard it's an heirloom, family piece." I stood near the edge of the step and repeat with a glass of champagne I had no intention of finishing, watching Brenda work the carpet with the fluency of someone who had trained her whole adult life for exactly this. The tilt of the chin, the practiced half-turn, the smile that reached exactly as far as it needed to and not an inch further. She saw me once early on across the width of the carpet. Her eyes found me, flicked briefly to the absence of anything in my expression, and moved on, already dismissing me the way she dismissed me at every dinner table for 8 months. I watched her decide in real time that my silence meant I still didn't know, that I would stand here as I always had, watching her wear pieces of my life and saying nothing. I let her have that. I let her have all of it. The flashbulbs, the compliments, the reporter from the society page angling for a close-up of the Whitmore family diamonds. A phrase Brenda didn't correct. A phrase she let settle into print with the same practiced ease she'd used on every other line. Reyes found me near the bar 20 minutes later, her earpiece catching the light the way the diamonds had. GPS is confirmed live on site, matching the necklace's last chip ping to within 3 feet of her current position, she said quietly. "Whenever you're ready." I looked back toward the carpet, where Brenda had turned to find David for a couple's photo, her hand resting on his lapel, Her face tilted up toward him with an expression of practiced adoration that had fooled an entire family for 4 years. "Now," I said. The moment itself happened faster than 8 months of waiting had prepared me for. Reyes crossed the carpet with 2 uniformed officers who'd been staged near the coat check, moving with the unhurried authority of people who did this often enough that urgency wasn't necessary. The photographers, sensing something shifting in the choreography of the evening, swung their lenses toward the disruption on instinct, the way cameras always find the moment before anyone understands what the moment is. "Brenda Whitmore?" Reyes' voice carried, pitched exactly loud enough to be heard over the ambient hum of the ballroom without shouting. "I need you to step aside, please." Brenda's smile held for one more second, the muscle memory of a woman who'd spent a lifetime performing composure. "I'm sorry, is there a problem? The necklace you're wearing has been identified as stolen property, reported by the owner, with a documented chain of evidence." Reyes' hand moved, professional and unhesitating, to the clasp at the back of Brenda's neck. "I'm going to need you to remove it, or I will." The flashbulbs, which had dimmed slightly in confusion, exploded back to full intensity, a wall of white light catching Brenda's face at the exact moment her smile finally, completely, failed her. "This is a mistake," she said, her voice climbing, David's hand suddenly gripping her arm, not in comfort but in something closer to bracing. "This necklace is a family heirloom. Ask my husband, ask." "It belongs to Clara Whitmore," Reyes said, unclasping it herself when Brenda's hands, shaking now, fumbled the catch. "Estate documentation confirms provenance. GPS tracking confirms continuous chain of custody from a residential theft 9 days ago. You have the right to remain silent." The handcuffs went on in front of 40 cameras, the metallic click of the ratchet audible even over the rising murmur of 300 guests turning, as one organism, toward the center of the room. Brenda's face, caught in that unrelenting flash of light, cycled through disbelief, fury, and finally something rower than either. The specific horror of a woman watching her entire constructed self collapse in real time, in front of the exact audience she'd spent years curating. Her eyes found me then, across the width of the ballroom, searching the crowd the way a drowning person searches water for anything solid. She found me standing perfectly still, my champagne glass untouched, my face arranged in an expression I hadn't rehearsed, but that came to me easily anyway, not triumph, not cruelty, just the quiet, finished stillness of a woman who had simply stopped waiting to be believed. The cameras kept firing. Brenda kept staring at me, handcuffed, glittering, exposed. I didn't look away. The story ran on every society page in the city by morning, and by the following week, on several that weren't local at all. "Stolen heirloom, staged entrance, gala arrest," the headline said, in varying degrees of restraint, accompanied by the same photograph over and over. Brenda in emerald green, diamonds still catching light, hands cuffed behind her back while a detective's face remained composed beside her unraveling one. The image had a cinematic quality that made it irresistible to editors, the kind of photograph that got shared not because anyone particularly cared about jewelry theft, but because it captured something people recognized instinctively. A beautiful, curated life collapsing in real time, in full view, with no way to spin it into anything else. The company distanced itself within 48 hours. A carefully worded statement about the gala being a private social event unaffiliated with corporate proceedings. Though I noticed David's name quietly disappeared from 2 board committees within the month, collateral damage from a scandal he hadn't caused but couldn't entirely separate himself from either. Diane called me 9 days after the gala, her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it, none of the weary patience left in it at all. "I didn't know," she said, which might have even been true, though it landed differently than it would have 8 months earlier. "Clara, I swear to you, I had no idea it had gone that far." "You knew enough to call me a liar," I said, not unkindly, just factually, the way I'd learned to say things now. That was always the part that mattered. She didn't have an answer for that. I let the silence sit there for a moment before I told her gently that I needed to go, and I meant it in every sense of the phrase. David filed for divorce 11 days after the gala, moving fast in a way that surprised people who hadn't seen what I'd seen. The closet footage rays had eventually shown him as part of the evidentiary disclosure. Months of Brenda's face on camera, calm and practiced, taking things that were never hers with the ease of someone who'd never once expected to be caught. Whatever performance of devotion Brenda had maintained for 4 years, it hadn't survived contact with unedited footage of who she actually was when she thought no one was watching. She lost more than the marriage. The social circle she'd spent a decade curating evaporated within a month. The same women who'd complimented her vintage Chanel, now unfollowing, unfriending, quietly erasing her from the photographs of galas and luncheons where she'd once been the center of every frame. There's a particular kind of exile reserved for people whose entire value in certain rooms was aesthetic. And Brenda's aesthetic, once the arrest photo existed, could never be fully separated from it again. The criminal case moved through the system over the following months, the evidence too complete for any real defense to take shape. Grand larceny, multiple counts once the earlier thefts came to light through the same spreadsheet I'd built at my kitchen table. The scarf, the bracelet, the blouse still bearing its tags, each one now a documented count on a legal filing instead of a small humiliation I'd swallowed at a dinner table. She avoided prison through a plea agreement, restitution, and probation. Her lawyer's best available outcome given what the footage showed. I received full financial restitution for everything she'd taken and never given back, though the number on that settlement mattered far less to me than the item that mattered most, returned to me in its original velvet box, chip still stitched quietly into the lining, 3 weeks after the gala. I didn't attend the rest of the legal proceedings. I'd gotten what I needed from that system the moment the handcuffs closed. Everything after was paperwork. I moved out of David and Brenda's social orbit entirely that winter, not dramatically, just steadily. The way you step back from a fire once you've finally stopped needing to feel its heat to know it's dangerous. I saw David twice over the following year, both times briefly, both times civil in the careful way people are civil when they're still deciding how much blame belongs to each other. I still think about that dinner table sometimes, Diane's fork set down with practiced patience, the sentence about misplacing things, the particular loneliness of being disbelieved by people who'd known me my whole life. I don't carry it the way I used to. It's become something closer to a fact from another chapter, true but no longer load-bearing. I wear my mother's necklace sometimes now to nothing in particular. A Tuesday dinner, a walk through the city, occasions that don't require an audience or a red carpet or anyone's validation at all. The chip is still in the lining. I've never had it removed. It feels, in some quiet way I don't examine too closely, like a small insurance policy against ever again being told that what I know to be true isn't. The gala footage still circulates sometimes, resurfacing in a slow news week, a caption calling it one of the most spectacular society scandals in years. I don't watch it anymore. I don't need to. I remember the weight of the handcuffs closing, the sound they made, sharper than I expected. I remember Brenda's eyes finding mine across that ballroom, searching for something I no longer had any obligation to give her. I didn't look away then. I haven't needed to look back since.